Hello, AP Worlders. This is your lecture on the emergence of trade. All right, emergence of interregional trade and communication and exchange. All right. Within the organization of large-scale empires, the volume of long-distance trade is going to increase dramatically. Much of this trade resulted from the demand for raw materials and luxury goods. Land and water routes are going to link many of the regions of the Eastern Hemisphere. The exchange of people, technology, religions, and cultural beliefs, food, domesticated animals, and disease are going to develop along these trade routes. In the Americas and Oceania, there'll be localized networks of trade. Geography is going to be a big determinant of what, where, and by whom would be traded. Climate and topography, such as mountains, plains, deserts, rivers, seas, they're going to determine what valuable minerals are found in the types of plants that you have. Trade happens because people want goods. Salt's going to be a very important trade good. It's going to be used to preserve food during this time period. Merchants are going to be willing to take great risk in hopes of making a great profit. Trade's going to allow Romans to buy silk from China. But one thing of note with these trade routes is it's not going to be one merchant who's going to transport it all the way. So it's not going to be a merchant that's going to go all the way from Rome to China to trade. What happens is goods are going to be relayed from town to town. So merchants would transport, for instance, silk for a couple 100 miles, and then they would trade to the next caravan group, get their money, and they would go back, and then that next caravan group would trade it, with this caravan group, etc., all the way until it got to Rome. So as you could guess, what's going to happen to the price of these goods as they go, right? The price of the goods are going to get higher the further it gets along, because each person is going to mark the price up a little bit more as they trade it along the Silk Road or any other trade route. The Silk Road is going to be our first trade route we're going to talk about. All right, as you can see, it wasn't one road. And second, some of the Silk Road would cover over water. All right, so it wasn't just completely a land-based trade route, but it's going to be the most extensive at the time. And it was named because of the highly valued silk that was traded along it. China, they were the only people who knew how to make silk at the time, so it made it very desirable. But there are other items besides for silk that would be traded, such as horses, spices, furs, ivory, perfume, rice, wool, tea, cotton, spices, glass, gold, furs, olive oil. All right, so there's a lot of different things that are going to be traded. Those are just to name a few. But this exchange of grains and fabrics across Eurasia changed the farming techniques as well. One example of how new farming techniques are going to spread is this quaint system. All right, it was a form of irrigation where you would transport water from below ground to the surface in arid regions. All right, this is going to spread throughout Southwest Asia. Another thing that's going to spread along the Silk Road is going to be religion. Merchants and missionaries from South Asia are going to introduce, Buddhism along these trade routes. Tea and horse caravan roads are going to extend from China to South Asia. All right, but one of the negatives that's also going to spread along the Silk Road and all trade routes is going to be disease. Disease is going to lead to the decline of both Rome and China, and it's going to be because they're trading on the Silk Road, this disease that's going to be spreading on the Silk Road. The next major trade route is the Saharan trade. Saharan trade is going to be in Africa. It's going to be across the Sahara Desert, which is why it's known as the Sahara trade. Coastal cities and ports along the Mediterranean sea coast were rich in vegetation. So these areas would be rich in vegetation. And then commodities like dates, cotton, dyes, glass will be supplied from these cities and ports. South of the Mediterranean coastal area is Sahara Desert. Merchants would carry these goods into the desert and trade in the desert for gold, salt, ivory, animal hides, and slaves. And then they would bring them back, and from there they could go to the Silk Road. The introduction of the camel would help boost these trade routes. And it's going to lead to a real increase in trade on these Sahara trade routes. In the next era, we're going to see how Islam is going to spread along these trade routes. All right, another trade route that's going to have its origins during this time period is going to be this Indian Ocean trade. All right, it's going to have its roots during the next era, the post-classical. This is going to be the main trade, this Indian Ocean trade. But its roots are going to start here, and it's going to connect, as you can see, all these different areas of East Asia, the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. All right, also we're going to have this Mediterranean Sea trade, which will be an important trade route as well, especially when the Romans had it. The Greeks started it, the Romans are going to continue it. All right, then we're also going to have roads, right? These are examples of the Roman roads. All right, the Roman Empire is going to build roads throughout their empire to facilitate trade. And then the Persians, here, they're going to build the Persian roads, which are going to facilitate trade all throughout Persia. All right, then the last area to talk about is the American trade and the turquoise trade. All right, they're going to trade on a much smaller scale than Afro-Eurasia. All right, reason why they're going to be smaller scale trade in the Americas is it was one, a lot less people in the Americas. And there were fewer large animals in the Americas. And the wheel was not used in transportation in the Americas. So they had a lot of limitations which made their trade smaller. So even though there was difficulty, there was evidence of exchange of goods, especially tobacco, corn, and pottery, gold, turquoise. All right, that's why they were called the turquoise roads in like Mesoamerica area, because that was the main trade good, the turquoise, as well as turtle shells and jewelry. All right, and so that's it for trade during these classical era. But the main thing to know is that these trade routes are going to have their foundations during this classical era, and then during post-classical era is when these trade routes are really going to expand. All right, that's it. See you in class.